want to trade with me and next Friday you would play and I play Thursday?
That's fine.
All right, I'll check with you again just when you're home.
Okay. Good idea.
Write it down when we try that.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to Illinois
Oh,
and we go Friday. I don't know what time, but I thought, well, maybe we trade.
no problem.
I know, okay.
Good morning. It's good to see you all here. And thanks to Tim, who coordinated everything, making it happen, and to Dwight for creating a place to center in the songs of our faith and to stand, making it possible that we can all hear. Can everyone hear? Okay. I'm Amy Gall, Ritchie, Associate Pastor of Pastoral Care and Faith Formation at the Manchester Church of the Brethren, and I'm always delighted to be with you. I want to say that I love this time of year when green garden things seem out of control. When I lived in Richmond, Indiana, I had half a dozen wonderful varieties of daylilies, yellow, orange, deep red, some that had double blossoms and some that had really frilly edges. It's an earlier growth season down there than it is up here, and my daylilies always did their first blooms when I was at our denomination's annual conference, which always takes place in early July. I would watch with great anticipation all June for their blooming, and then I would beg them to just wait till I got back home so that I could celebrate their beauty with them. Hear the scriptures for today from Genesis 1, 11 and 12. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, the trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And from 1 Corinthians 15, 40 and 41. There are both heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is one thing, and that of the earthly is another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. Indeed, star differs from star in glory. I have often said that I love nature, and I love it most from behind a window. I burn easily in the sun's influence, and I can really only allow myself an hour and a half in it. I appreciate bugs, but not on me. And I don't really like the feel of grass on my feet, although that is changing with intention and practice. But I love nature. I have heard and learned things from trees, but in the past, people called me a plant killer. In 2003, I was given a little baby plant, a little start for my new office at Bethany Theological Seminary, where I had just started. I was a little nervous having this plant because I killed green things. But that plant was so amazing that it is still alive in 2022. I brought it for show and tell. Now, this type of plant, I don't even know what it is, will go for weeks in close, neglectful proximity to an appreciative but oblivious gardener. And then it will just wilt. But that is the key. That wilt always got my attention. With nothing to lose, I would water it and it would spring up again. Little resurrections happening in the student development office over and over for years. At some point in my final year at Bethany, I became suddenly aware that I could not recall the last time I had watered my plants, any of them, like months. Yet there they were. They were healthy and upright and happy, and I pondered this mystery. It was no mystery. It was Esther, Bethany's intrepid housekeeper, Esther, whose father healed many people with his large healing hands. Esther, our secret waterer. She was also a healer of plants, and she apparently adopted my office plants, which thrived in her care. I appreciated the plants, but she made space for them and kept them alive. See how it has filled the space created for it? And then I discovered a houseplant trend of succulents. Besides that being one of the best words ever, these are plants that retain their water in plump and juicy green leaves, going weeks without water. Right up my gardening alley. And after the succulents, I discovered air plants. That's right, they don't need soil, just air. Somebody saw me coming. So I bought some air plants for my Bethany office, and I bought 3 succulents for my home office. But maybe I took a little too literally how long the succulents could go without water. And after a neglectful winter, I looked close and saw that they looked dead. So with nothing to lose, I took them to a warmer room and watered them. And a couple weeks later, upon close inspection, I saw that their succulent older leaves were dying off, but the tops were forming new life, tiny crowns, gorgeous futures in miniature. I moved them to the window in front of the kitchen sink so I could be more attentive to them as they craned their plump stems toward the morning sun coming in through the glass, watching day after day as the tiny perfections of new life took hold right out of the old life. It's a wonder. And then there were the bamboo starts we planted out front of the house along the bank by the fence. There was a big open space. These bamboo starts came from a friend who had experienced a freeze and lost most of his bamboo patch. That friend said, "Plant it with plenty of space because it will fill it and go wandering to the next vacant place. It's as tough underground as it is above ground." Bamboo doesn't need any human help to grow, to bust through concrete borders in their rooty reach to multiply. Their generous abundance is such a testament to the overgrown tenacity of the Creator's image in creation. Space was made for them, and they could not help but fill it. We are third day people who cannot live without the greening, growing, spreading ways of nature. Thanks be to God for spring and summer and secret waterers. Our creation story tells us that God on the first day separated light and dark, and on the second day there was a separation of the waters above and the waters below, and on the third day there was a separation of the waters below and the land that was dry, and then still on the third day there was the green of sprouts, trees, seed, vegetation, all over the earth. We are part of the seedy, fruity creation. We are in the greening. We are dependent on the greening. The waters of life move within us too. The creation story is in bits and parts until we see wholeness. Nothing into something, void into everything, a splash of variety. In the words of an Old Testament scholar, God makes space and God fills it. We are seeing this with each photo sent back to us by the James Webb Space Telescope, that creation, even in the already vast universe, is still happening. The act of creation in our sacred text is a holistic one bit dependent upon another bit, until there is a whole. Even the trees and plant and veg are in cahoots with the multiplying, the filling, and the propagating of life. The fourth day brings the sun and the moon. The fifth day fills the air with sea and fills the air and sea with birds and sea creatures. The sixth day brings animals and humans. We have taken part of the water of life, the fruit of life, the meat of life, the sleep of night, the toil of day, and on the seventh day, rest. Creation is a wholly connected thing of bits and pieces. It is life, and it is good. Genesis commentator David W. Cotter points us to a revered scholar, Everett Fox, who captures the near poetry of the original text of Genesis 1:11 like this. Let the earth sprout forth with sprouting growth, plants that seed forth seeds, fruit trees that yield fruit after their kind, in which is their seed upon the earth. The Hebrew poetry with repetition, sprouts sprouting and seeds seeding and fruit trees fruiting, is an emphatic yes to abundance. This language opens to us refreshed understanding that each bit is created to be what it is to be. Each plant distinct and wondrous in its own way, after its kind, like us. Clearly, something amazing is happening for the first time. Bethany Seminary's academic dean, Stephen Schweitzer, says that these verses in Genesis help to give shape to the ancient dietary laws, limits and restrictions that were strictly enforced for the good of the community. Where I see rampant abundance, ancient ways saw rigid adherence with everything in its own lane, no crossovers. Now, I have a group of Jewish friends up in the Chicago area who are keen observers of their Jewish faith and active life in temple. And they also have a keen sense of self-deprecating humor. And they made a hilarious home video parody called Kosher Expectations in their kitchen. It's irreverent. It pokes good-hearted fun at their own dietary traditions and limits and upbringings as they scoot things back and forth from this separate counter to that separate corner, saying oops over and over again. Those oops crossovers that would be considered unthinkable to those who keep kosher. They take their faith very seriously. They are lighthearted about the restrictions. In a conversation that followed a laughter-filled reliving and retelling of making the video, they talked about the shame and guilt that often came from temple members when kosher was not kept, and how they knew, they themselves, that the order does not always offer the best way forward when life and goodness is what is sought. Is day 3 a witness to ordered perfection with limits, or a witness to the overflowing of life? And what about the changes that have occurred over time? Is change itself an aberration, or are we in the ongoing space of creative filling? I know that some of my former daylily varieties were genetic crossovers to get the frilly edges or the deep hues. We know that if we do a DNA sample with Ancestry.com, that we see that we are made up of genetic crossovers from a variety of human lineages. If uncertain whether you should go with shame and guilt or blooming life, follow the life. The commentaries don't give us much to go on for these 2 fertile scriptures in Genesis. Not much to dig into and decipher. So we have to dig into and decipher them alongside the stories and metaphors of our own inner living gardens, tending patiently to the growth of community. We must consciously prune when the next and the new maturity and growth comes into succulent view. Sprouting right out of the crown of our old, our sacred texts invite us to the crossover of life lifing in real time. New is not always best just for newness' sake, and old is not always rightly tossed for the sake of making space. We get to work with new growth that rises out of established growth. As members of local congregations and Timbercrest, we must tend to our green spaces within ourselves and within the life and the people and programs we care for. How are we dreaming of new gardens in our relationships, in our daily prayers? How do we tend our own inner garden so that it looks like the lovingly tended plots we see all over Timbercrest? We must see where we can burst through the borders and old stone walls to reach beyond what we now know into what is possible to yet be known. As we live into the daily patterns, we also get to be part of the abundance when learners learn, supporters support, friends friend, prayers pray, laughers laugh, and triers try. We transform a space, a ready plot of daily living, into a filled Eden of God's presence in the life of the mind and heart. Our current moment is the growing seed, the ripening fruit, the unruly, uncontainable growth. Does your faith allow for a sacred, secret waterer among us, causing crossover between all of us? What might we become when we see each one of us as distinct trees bearing fruit, distinct varieties blooming in a whole lush garden of life? Life is good when it is orderly and defined. And it is lush and wild when the unruly morning glory vine their way over into the green beans and the zucchini overrun the whole thing, and there are more tumbling tomatoes than the cages can keep upright. And now, each time I kick off my shoes to go outside and feel the grass on my feet, I lean into possibility. The possibility of the love of life coming from unexpected places, out of order crossovers to where skin and grass meet, out of order crossovers where the dandelion is seen as a weed but is actually the most nourishing, freely growing green. Out of order crossovers where plants can thrive in air without soil. Out of order crossover where I see the sacred in you and you see the sacred in me, and together we sprout up something new, filling the space, perceiving together the start of what is rising from the crown of the old, eyeing the future in miniature. Please pray with me. Oh God, you move us to new things. Where once we had no clue how to grow green things, you now enjoy our lush greenery. Where once we could not see hope, you now enjoy sprouting vision within us. Where once we felt the wilt of life, you now enjoy nourishing a new and different life within us, like the smallest of yellow blooms on an unnamed volunteer plant. We give you thanks that you are our God at every age, every stage, every point of dreaming, planting, growing. You are secretly watering us, even now. Thank you. Amen.